It brings me great sadness that it has come to this. The decision that I have made for my wife and I to step back is not one I made lightly.
Everything seemed picture perfect until it wasn't. What really happened behind the royal smiles and carefully crafted statements? From secret legal moves to silent tensions and bold revelations, the true story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle is far more complex than headlines suggest. Why did Harry act alone? How did Meghan really respond? And what does it all mean for the future of the monarchy? Over the past year and a half, there's been a growing shift in the way Prince Harry has interacted with the royal family and with the public. For someone who once played such a central role within the monarchy, his recent actions have caught many off guard. What began as a series of low-profile visits to the UK quickly evolved into a more complex narrative. These trips, quiet and largely under the radar, sparked curiosity. There were no official events, no joint appearances with Meghan Markle, and very little media coverage. Still, something about them didn't go unnoticed. Royal observers, commentators, and even fans of the couple began to question the motivation behind these solo visits. Was Harry simply managing personal matters? Or was there something more significant going on behind closed doors? Harry's decision to operate more discreetly marked a clear contrast to the very public image he and Meghan had crafted since stepping back from royal duties in early 2020. In those early years after Megxit, the couple was highly visible, launching media projects, signing major deals, and speaking out on social issues. But more recently, Harry's moves have seemed quieter, more calculated, and perhaps more independent. One detail that stood out to many was Meghan's absence. Known for their strong public partnership, Harry and Meghan had nearly always operated as a team. From interviews to official announcements, their messaging had been tightly aligned. So when Harry began making solo trips and handling matters in the UK without Meghan by his side, people started speculating. Was it a sign of growing distance between them? Or could it have been a strategic decision to separate their roles as public figures? At the same time that Harry was making these visits, Meghan was focusing on her own ventures. She had started laying the groundwork for the relaunch of her lifestyle brand, a project that seemed to draw heavily on her identity as both a modern public figure and the Duchess of Sussex. It was clear she was stepping into a new phase of her career, one that aimed to blend personal branding with entrepreneurial ambition. That's where things became even more intriguing. Around this same period, Prince Harry reportedly made a legal adjustment related to the use of his royal title, the Duke of Sussex. While the specifics of the change weren't made fully public, insiders revealed that the move placed new limitations on how the Sussex title could be used commercially. For Meghan, this had direct implications. Her brand had been positioned around a hybrid image, modern, independent, and yet still connected to the aura of royalty. Any legal constraint on the use of that title threatened to complicate her branding strategy. The decision raised a number of questions. If Harry and Meghan had always presented themselves as united in their public and private ventures, why would Harry make such a significant move without clear coordination? And more importantly, why now? For those familiar with the way the royal institution works, Harry's decision represented more than just a personal step. When he and Meghan stepped back from official duties in 2020, they were allowed to keep their titles, but they lost the right to use the style His/Her Royal Highness, and no longer represented the monarchy in any formal capacity. However, they still continued to use the Sussex title in a personal and professional context, whether through books, podcasts, or other business efforts. Harry's latest action appeared to tighten that informal use. By doing so, it potentially signaled a change in his stance toward their public image as a couple. It introduced the possibility that Harry was trying to redefine his own identity, separate from both the royal family and the brand he and Meghan had built together. This legal move didn't just affect Meghan's brand plans. It added a new layer to the public's understanding of their relationship. Some interpreted it as a shift in Harry's priorities, a desire to reclaim control over how his title was used, or to draw firmer boundaries between himself and royal associations. Others speculated that it reflected deeper personal changes, perhaps an internal struggle or a quiet need for space. According to sources close to the couple, the change came as a surprise to Meghan. Though she did not make an immediate public comment, it was clear that she had been caught off guard. For a couple that had always projected unity, Harry's solo legal move raised questions about communication and trust. Insiders noted that Meghan seemed shaken, not simply because of the business implications, but because of how the decision was made and communicated. While there's no evidence to suggest a major fallout, observers couldn't help but notice the emotional tone in Meghan's private reaction. Reports suggest that she spent time speaking with her legal team, trying to understand the implications. What concerned her most, according to those in their circle, wasn't just the legal language. It was the feeling of not being consulted. This marked a noticeable shift in how the couple's dynamics were being perceived. For a long time, their strength had been in their partnership. Now, with Harry making moves independently, there was speculation that they might be starting to pursue individual paths, professionally and possibly personally. What made the situation more complex was how public and private interests became entangled. Meghan's brand wasn't just about products or messaging, it was about identity. Being the Duchess of Sussex wasn't simply a title, it was part of how she was introduced, covered, and connected with her audience. Any restriction on that element didn't just alter the legal landscape, it altered the emotional and public one too. Despite the questions swirling around their relationship, both Harry and Meghan remained composed in public. There were no dramatic statements, no online reactions, and no signs of confrontation. But silence, as some have pointed out, can sometimes speak louder than words. In this case, it suggested deliberation. Both were clearly processing the implications of this shift. What remains uncertain is whether this move signals a deeper transformation in how Harry and Meghan will navigate their roles moving forward. Are they gradually evolving into two separate public identities? Is Harry trying to step back even further from the royal spotlight? And if so, where does that leave Meghan and the brand she's worked to build? These are the questions being asked, not just by the media, but by supporters, critics, and royal watchers around the world. While Harry's legal action may seem like a technical adjustment, it has opened the door to broader discussions about identity, autonomy, and the future of the couple's public life. What started as a subtle move has now become a moment of reflection. For Harry, it may represent a step toward clarity. For Meghan, it may be the start of a new phase, one where her voice stands on its own, shaped by experience rather than title. According to those close to the couple, the atmosphere inside their Montecito home shifted noticeably after the news broke. Meghan was said to be deeply surprised, not necessarily by the move itself. After all, she understood the complexity of their relationship with the monarchy, but by the fact that she hadn't been included in the decision-making process. For a couple that had long operated as a unit, who publicly declared their intention to tackle challenges together, this seemed out of character. Behind closed doors, sources say Meghan's reaction was immediate and emotionally charged. She reportedly moved quickly to get legal advice, speaking to her team to clarify the details and implications of the change. It wasn't just a matter of business or branding. There was an emotional layer to it, one tied to feeling excluded from something that directly impacted her and the work she had been doing. Over the years, Meghan and Harry had presented themselves not only as a couple in love, but also as a professional partnership. Their projects, from interviews to charitable foundations to media productions, were tightly coordinated. The public saw them as aligned in both vision and action. So when Harry made a move on his own, it disrupted that image. It introduced a degree of unpredictability that hadn't been part of their narrative before. Some observers saw this as a potential turning point. Could it signal cracks in the partnership? Or was it a strategic divergence, designed to give each of them more room to operate independently? For Meghan, being left out of this particular decision seemed to create a moment of reckoning. It forced her to consider how closely their public identities needed to be tied moving forward. Those close to her described Meghan's response as a mix of emotional reflection and calculated restraint. There were no rushed public comments. Instead, she took time to gather her thoughts. What emerged wasn't a press conference or a formal rebuttal, but a short message delivered through reliable sources. It was brief, composed, and made clear that she wasn't going to let titles, or the lack of them, define her voice. The message struck a chord. Without directly addressing Harry or the decision itself, Meghan communicated something important. She was prepared to stand on her own, not as the Duchess of Sussex, but simply as Meghan. A woman, a mother, a public figure in her own right. Her words didn't just address the change, they reframed it. And for many, that response said more than any direct confrontation could have. It's worth remembering that Meghan has long been a strategic communicator. Before joining the royal family, she ran her own lifestyle blog, spoke openly about women's rights, and built a career in Hollywood. She understands how narratives are shaped. Her choice to stay quiet initially and respond subtly wasn't a sign of passivity. It was a sign of control. That control extended into her next moves. According to insiders, Meghan began reassessing several business decisions and paused certain public appearances. She reportedly chose to scale back temporarily, not out of fear or defeat, but to create space to think more deliberately about her path forward. During this period, she was said to have spent more time with her mother, Doria Ragland, and leaned into the support of close friends. One notable outcome of this reflection was a renewed interest in telling her own story, possibly through a memoir. For months, there had been whispers about the idea, but nothing concrete. Now, in light of the developments, those close to her suggested that a book might become a real possibility. It would give Meghan an opportunity to speak freely, on her own terms, without filters, middlemen, or institutional oversight. Publishing a memoir isn't just about setting the record straight. It's about reclaiming the narrative, especially for someone whose public image has been shaped as much by speculation and headlines as by personal statements. A book would offer Meghan a chance to define her journey in her own words, from her childhood and acting career to her life inside and outside of the royal family. If the memoir goes ahead, it could mark a significant shift in how Meghan engages with the public. Rather than presenting curated snippets through interviews or articles, it would allow for a deeper, more personal account of her experiences. It would also invite a new wave of scrutiny, both positive and critical. But Meghan, by all accounts, is prepared for that. Her recent actions suggest a deliberate shift towards independence, transparency, and self-ownership. While Meghan was preparing for what could be a major new chapter in her public life, Harry's actions continued to raise questions. Was he trying to protect the integrity of the royal institution by limiting the use of titles? Or was he creating distance from Meghan, from shared business ventures, or perhaps even from the public eye altogether? Observers noticed a change in his behavior as well. He seemed quieter, more introspective. No longer the center of attention at public events, he appeared to be stepping back, at least temporarily. For those who followed Harry's journey, this isn't entirely surprising. He's spoken openly about the pressures of royal life, the impact of media scrutiny, and the emotional toll of past experiences. But now, there seemed to be a new kind of weight, one tied not just to his family or the press, but to decisions that carry personal and professional consequences. Meghan and Harry's differing responses to this recent development painted an interesting picture. On one hand, Meghan was visibly regrouping, making plans, and preparing to re-engage with the public in a thoughtful way. On the other, Harry was more removed, possibly processing things privately, or waiting for the dust to settle. The contrast didn't go unnoticed. While it's impossible to know the full story behind closed doors, the optics suggested a moment of divergence, at least in how they were choosing to navigate the challenges in front of them. This divergence isn't necessarily a sign of conflict. It could simply reflect two people growing in different ways, responding to pressure with different instincts. What's clear, though, is that the partnership that once seemed seamlessly united is now evolving. Whether that evolution brings them closer in new ways or reveals more fundamental differences remains to be seen. As public figures, every move they make is scrutinized. But in this moment, their silence, their subtle signals, and their individual actions speak volumes. Meghan's decision to stay calm and measured in her response, combined with her apparent readiness to tell her own story, shows a new level of personal clarity. Harry's quiet legal move, while potentially disruptive, also points to his desire to take ownership over how his title and legacy are used. Together, their recent behavior suggests a shift in how they will operate, not as a single brand or voice, but as two individuals who may now be exploring different directions. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a natural part of their growth, both as people and as public figures. Relationships, especially those lived in the spotlight, change. The key is how those changes are managed, and whether mutual respect and communication can carry them through. Harry, on the other hand, had always been the more informal royal. He was often seen as the fun-loving younger brother of Prince William, known for his candid personality and for being more emotionally open than most members of the royal family. So when the two met through a mutual friend and their relationship blossomed quickly, people were fascinated. Two worlds, Hollywood glamour and British royalty, were about to collide. From the beginning, their relationship was the subject of intense media coverage. The intrigue wasn't just about Harry dating an actress. It was about what Meghan represented. She was biracial, divorced, and outspoken, traits not often associated with members of the royal family. The attention was immediate, and the tone of coverage ranged widely. Some outlets praised the couple as a symbol of modern progress within the monarchy, while others resorted to critical and sometimes racially charged narratives. Despite the scrutiny, Harry and Meghan moved forward with their relationship. By November 2017, they were officially engaged. In their first joint interview, they appeared relaxed, candid, and deeply connected. Meghan spoke about giving up her acting career to focus on royal duties, while Harry emphasized their shared values and vision. Their chemistry was evident, and the public's interest only grew. Their wedding in May 2018 was watched by millions around the globe. Held at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, the ceremony was a blend of tradition and modernity. Meghan's dress, designed by Claire Waite-Keller for Givenchy, was elegant and minimalist. But more than just fashion, the event itself made statements. From a gospel choir to an American bishop delivering a passionate sermon, the ceremony reflected their unique backgrounds and values. It was, in many ways, a symbol of change within an institution steeped in tradition. Following their marriage, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex quickly became prominent figures within the royal family. They championed issues like mental health, gender equality, and environmental conservation. Their overseas tours received significant attention, and their growing family brought even more public interest. When their son Archie was born in 2019, it marked another milestone in their journey. For many, it seemed like the couple was thriving, balancing their roles as royals and as modern, relatable public figures. However, behind the scenes, not everything was as seamless as it appeared. The intense media pressure didn't ease after the wedding. It escalated. Meghan, in particular, faced a wave of criticism, much of it driven by tabloids. Her every gesture, outfit, and comment was dissected. Claims about tensions within the royal household started to emerge. Stories surfaced about alleged rifts between Harry and his brother Prince William, as well as between Meghan and other members of the royal staff. The couple became visibly affected by the negative attention. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Meghan opened up during a documentary filmed during a tour in South Africa. Asked how she was coping, she responded honestly, saying that few people had asked if she was okay. The clip went viral, resonating with people who saw in her words a reflection of the emotional toll public life can take, particularly when that life is under constant scrutiny. By early 2020, rumors began to circulate that the couple were considering stepping back from royal life. Then came the announcement that made headlines around the world. In January, Harry and Meghan released a statement saying they planned to step away from their roles as senior members of the royal family, split their time between the UK and North America, and work toward becoming financially independent. The reaction was swift and polarizing. Some praised them for prioritizing their mental health and personal freedom. Others accused them of disrespecting the monarchy. The press labeled the move Megxit, a term that seemed to place the responsibility squarely on Meghan's shoulders, a framing that critics said ignored Harry's own agency in the decision. The following weeks were tense. Meetings were held at Sandringham with senior royals, including Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Charles, and Prince William, to determine the terms of their departure. Eventually, it was agreed that the couple would retain their Duke and Duchess titles, but would no longer use the style of Her Royal Highness. They would no longer receive public funds or formally represent the Queen. In essence, they were stepping into a new life with different rules. That new life began in Canada and later moved to the United States, where they eventually settled in California. The transition wasn't just geographic, it was philosophical. They began focusing on building their brand outside of the monarchy. They founded the Archewell Foundation, aimed at driving community-based projects and supporting causes aligned with their values. They also signed deals with Netflix and Spotify, stepping into the world of media production. The goal was to tell stories that matter and to use their platform to spark meaningful conversations. For a couple often criticized for being too controlling of their image, these moves offered a way to take back some control over how they were seen. In 2021, they welcomed their second child, a daughter named Lilibet Diana. The name was significant, honoring both Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. It was a reminder that despite the distance, their connection to the royal family hadn't been entirely severed. The couple's journey was now firmly rooted outside the palace. But questions lingered. Were they happier? Was the new life meeting their expectations? And what would their evolving roles mean for the monarchy? Critics continued to question whether they could remain public figures without the infrastructure and support of the royal family. Supporters argued that they were creating a more authentic, independent identity. For Meghan and Harry, the move seemed to be less about rejecting family and more about redefining what it means to serve and to lead. Their story, which began with so much promise, had taken turns few could have predicted. What was initially seen as a fairy tale romance had morphed into a much more complex narrative, one about personal growth, institutional challenges, and the difficulty of maintaining individuality within a system that values conformity. As they continued to build their lives in the United States, they made fewer public appearances as a couple, choosing instead to focus on specific projects. Each move, each statement, is now carefully watched and interpreted. But what hasn't changed is the sense that Harry and Meghan remain central figures in conversations about the future of the monarchy, celebrity, and public life in the 21st century. It wasn't just a celebrity interview, it was a statement. For the first time, the couple publicly shared their perspective on the events that had led to their departure from royal life. Meghan, in particular, spoke candidly about the emotional toll of her time within the institution. She revealed how deeply isolated she had felt and said that at one point she experienced such distress that she had suicidal thoughts. These revelations shocked many and sparked a broader conversation about mental health, especially among public figures and within traditionally conservative institutions. What stood out was not only the content of what was shared, but the tone. Meghan and Harry were composed, measured, and clearly intentional in their words. They weren't aiming to start a war with the royal family, but they were determined to be honest about what they had gone through. Meghan discussed the moment she sought help for her mental health, but said she was told it wouldn't look good for the institution. That moment, she said, marked a turning point in how she understood her position within the royal framework. The interview also touched on race, a topic rarely addressed so openly in royal circles. Meghan shared that there had been conversations within the family about how dark her unborn son's skin might be. Though they chose not to name the individuals involved, the admission was enough to cause widespread reaction. The statement drew support from many who felt it highlighted underlying issues that had long been avoided or dismissed. Others were more skeptical, questioning the decision to share such details publicly without naming sources. Still, the impact was immediate. Media outlets across the world responded, as did the public. Some praised the couple's bravery, while others felt the interview was an unnecessary airing of family issues. Within the UK, responses were mixed, with royal commentators expressing both concern and frustration. The palace eventually released a brief statement saying that issues raised, particularly those involving race, were concerning and would be addressed privately. In the months that followed, the couple maintained a lower profile, focusing on their foundation and media projects. Harry continued his work with the Invictus Games, supporting veterans and service members, while Meghan took a more public stance on issues such as paid family leave and mental well-being. Their shared goal seemed clear: to use their platform in ways that aligned with their personal values, separate from the expectations of royal protocol. Even as they forged this new path, questions about their titles remained. They had retained the Duke and Duchess of Sussex designations, but not the right to use His or Her Royal Highness. That decision had originally been made as part of their agreement with the Queen in early 2020. At the time, it was seen as a compromise, allowing them to maintain a connection to the royal family while stepping back from official duties. However, public opinion has evolved. In recent years, there has been increasing discussion, especially in the UK, about whether the couple should continue to hold any titles at all. Some politicians have raised the idea of legal measures to remove the titles, particularly as Harry and Meghan continue to speak publicly about their experiences within the institution. Critics argue that it's inappropriate to hold titles associated with the monarchy while also being openly critical of it. Supporters, however, point out that the titles were granted by the Queen and are part of the couple's personal history, regardless of their current role. For Meghan, the title of Duchess of Sussex has been more than ceremonial. It has been part of her public identity, used across projects and platforms. Whether in interviews, written profiles, or business ventures, the title has helped maintain a connection between her personal brand and the legacy of the royal family. Losing it wouldn't just be symbolic. It could also affect her influence and positioning in certain circles. For Harry, the title carries a different weight. As someone born into the royal family, his association with it is more deeply rooted. Even after stepping away, he remains the son of the king and the brother of the future monarch. Removing his title might not change how people perceive him, but it could further formalize the distance between him and the institution he once represented. Speculation about Meghan's possible memoir has only intensified the discussion. There have been reports that she's considering writing a book that would cover her life, including her time within the royal family and the transition out of it. If published, such a memoir could reignite many of the debates stirred by the Oprah interview, potentially revealing new details, clarifying earlier statements, or offering a more comprehensive view of her experience. For the monarchy, the idea of another public account, particularly one as personal and direct as a memoir, could prove challenging. There is a long-standing tradition of silence and discretion within the royal family. Public airing of internal matters is seen as unorthodox, even controversial. Yet, in today's media environment, where transparency is often expected, the traditional approach has come under increasing pressure. As the royal family adapts to the reign of King Charles III, these tensions are becoming more visible. Charles is known for wanting to modernize the institution, but that effort must now compete with the lingering effects of the Harry and Meghan story. Prince William, too, is stepping further into the spotlight, taking on more duties and preparing for a future role as king. Meanwhile, public interest in Kate Middleton's health has added another layer of complexity to the royal narrative. Within this context, Harry and Meghan's ongoing presence looms large. Even though they are no longer working royals, their actions and statements continue to shape perceptions of the monarchy. Any new interview, legal move, or media project is interpreted through the lens of their relationship with the royal family. The question is no longer just about what they're doing, but how it reflects on the institution they left behind. Legal teams on both sides are said to be watching closely. Confidentiality agreements, formal commitments made during their transition, and the potential for reputational damage are all in play. For the palace, protecting the legacy of the monarchy is a key priority. For Meghan and Harry, the focus appears to be on protecting their autonomy and using their voices in ways that feel authentic. The outcome of this ongoing tension remains uncertain. Will Harry and Meghan keep their titles? Will Meghan publish her memoir? Will the royal family respond publicly to future revelations? These are the questions that continue to circulate. What seems clear is that both Harry and Meghan are entering a new phase. It is one less defined by their royal past and more shaped by their personal convictions. Meghan's recent statements suggest that she is not motivated by revenge or resentment, but by the desire to speak honestly about her journey. Her tone is not one of anger, but of resolution. This story, which began as a royal romance, has evolved into something far more complex. It now involves institutional reform, public identity, and the search for purpose in the face of intense scrutiny. And while the spotlight may shift from time to time, Harry and Meghan remain central figures in a much larger conversation about what modern royalty looks like and whether the system can evolve to meet the moment.